Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Verlicity AI Podcast. I'm Cristian Worthington, co-founder of Verlicity AI. I've launched 5 different SaaS startups over the years, and along the way, I've picked up a few software patents. More importantly, I've learned how software businesses are built from scratch. It can be a real uphill battle, but it's a journey I love.
And I'm Sandra Giffin, also co-founder of Verlicity AI. I'm a lawyer by training, but I've spent my entire career in the software industry, helping to launch multiple startups. Today, Chris and I want to shed some light on how the AI revolution is changing the game for software entrepreneurs.
Yeah, we're calling this episode, Is the Era of the Software Startup Over in the Age of AI? Because it's a pretty serious question. We're seeing a wave of AI advancements that could upend the entire concept of building a new software company from scratch. And we're not just speculating here. We're seeing real examples in real time. Whether you're in the software business or not, I think you'll find the concepts we're discussing today relevant to a wide range of industries that will be impacted by AI.
Let's begin by painting a picture of the traditional path most software startups have taken over the last, say, 2 decades. Chris, you've personally navigated this path multiple times. How do you typically start?
Sure. So in my experience, and I think this applies pretty broadly, you usually begin when you notice a problem or opportunity. You have an idea, and you develop a prototype, or what many folks call a minimum viable product, a proof of concept. Typically, you spend months coding a bare-bones version of your idea, just enough to prove there's something there. This stage involves a lot of late nights, uncertain objectives, and pivoting on the fly.
Right. And that stage might involve intense prototyping, where you're just testing out the concept and making adjustments as you get feedback. You're basically validating that someone out there cares enough to try your product.
The next step, once you have a decent prototype, assuming you haven't run out of coffee, money, or sanity, you try to get some early adopter clients. That might be a small pilot group or a friendly beta user you happen to know. And if you're lucky, you begin to get that invaluable feedback that shapes your next iterations.
And while all of that is happening, there's often the question of funding, right? Many founders reach a point where they realize, okay, we need more capital to keep going. That's when they might raise an angel investment. But that process can take months, often requiring a solid pitch deck, growth metrics, and a vision that sells well.
For sure. And once you get that initial or second round of funding, you're in growth mode. You hire more developers, build up your product, chase bigger customers. But often a pivot is required. You realize your initial idea needs to shift to a new market or change its feature set. That pivot can cost more time and more money, both of which can be in short supply.
And pivoting is basically the norm. Rarely does a startup's first idea end up being the final business model. That's another reason the timeline for product market fit can stretch out to a year or 2, or longer.
Exactly. And even after you achieve some level of product market fit, you're usually not profitable. Most startups chase top-line growth instead of bottom-line profit, at least in the early years. So you're often burning cash or reinvesting everything you earn right back into the business.
So putting all these steps together, prototyping, early adopters, funding, pivots, growth, this can easily take 3 to 5 years just to get to a place of stability and longer to reach real profitability.
Yes, absolutely. And it's important to note, historically, that was considered normal. Building a software product that's stable, robust, and well-known takes time. Now, let's keep this picture in mind when we look at what AI is doing to disrupt this ecosystem.
So now we shift gears to the AI piece, the reason we're all here. AI is evolving at a breakneck pace. Just a few years ago, AI meant specialized algorithms or data science experiments or a machine learning component in a bigger software system. Today, we have large language models like GPT-4 and beyond, generative image models, and even agentic AI frameworks that can automate entire tasks without constant human input.
Right. The question is, how does that threaten the classic software startup model? Well, let's put it this way. If it's going to take a startup a minimum of 3 years to develop a robust solution in a particular niche, is it possible that within those 3 years, AI tools will already be able to do the same job faster and cheaper?
Think about it. You're climbing a mountain step by step, prototyping, pivoting, scaling, new hires, angel investment, venture capital, late nights, the list goes on. This mountain is so tall that it takes you 3 years to get to the top. Meanwhile, just as you're reaching the summit of the mountain, an AI comes online that can run to the top in minutes, and it's free or nearly free.
And that's not just theoretical. We're already seeing glimpses of it. For instance, GPT-based coding assistants can generate large swaths of boilerplate code that used to require a human developer months to write from scratch. That alone might compress the prototyping phase drastically.
Exactly. And the more advanced these models get, the more they can handle the entire life cycle: ideation, coding, testing, even writing marketing copy. We need to consider how that changes the fundamental timeline of building new software.
That's why a lot of people are asking, should I even bother launching a software startup right now? If the window is 3 years before I see a payoff, AI may have leapfrogged ahead of me by then.
And it's not just about code. We've seen entire industries transformed by technology. Once that transformation starts, it doesn't happen overnight. Pieces get chipped away. But it can still be devastating if you're not prepared. Now let's talk about something that's on every founder's mind: the economics of funding. Typically, a new software venture might rely on angel investors, venture capital, or even accelerators for early-stage funding. But the AI revolution is casting a huge shadow over those traditional routes.
Absolutely. On one hand, you have this explosion of capital going into AI, like the multi-billion-dollar funds dedicated to generative models and agentic frameworks. But on the other hand, many VCs are nervous about how quickly AI could obliterate the very startups they invest in.
That's the negative scenario we need to address. If VCs start viewing AI as a threat, especially artificial superintelligence down the road, they may choose to sit on the sidelines for a while. They're asking questions like, why invest in a team coding a niche solution if, in 18 months, an AI can replicate or outperform it?
Right. So instead of fueling the next wave of software startups, some investors might shift to a wait-and-see approach or put their money only into the juggernaut AI platforms that already have momentum. They're betting those platforms will dominate, while smaller software businesses could get wiped out.
But it's not all doom and gloom. Contrarian investors often step in during times of uncertainty. Some funds believe that specialized AI plus human ventures, or startups with proprietary data, can still build defensible moats. They see a window for hyper-focused solutions that AI platforms won't immediately swallow.
However, the real concern is that timelines for ROI could shrink. If you can't demonstrate tangible results in 6 months or a year, you might not get that follow-on funding. VCs will be looking for rapid iteration, traction, and AI integration, basically proof you can adapt before AI turns your core product into a commodity.
Exactly. So for founders listening, you need to understand that old-school multi-year funding cycles might vanish. Whether investors are leaning in or out of AI, the safe bet is that they'll want you to move fast, show resilience, and use AI tools to keep costs low and development tight. There's likely less patience for meandering paths to market.
And if you sense your investors are skittish, it's on you to communicate a clear, AI-focused strategy. Show them how you'll leverage or coexist with advanced AI. Because if you don't, they might pass, fearful of backing what could be the next casualty in an AI-dominated future.
Let's zoom in on the concept of agentic AI. These are AI systems that can act on your behalf. They don't just answer questions, they perform tasks, connect to APIs, and in some cases, even spin up or shut down instances of themselves. That's next level stuff, but we're seeing it already in early frameworks like AutoGPT.
Exactly. Now add in something people are calling vibe coding. The idea is that people will interact with AI in a sort of vibey or intuitive manner to generate code or to generate AI agents. Imagine people having a conversation with an AI can generate a complete system without having to know any programming themselves.
Right. People worry it'll produce shoddy work, but let's dispel that myth. Because there's a perception that all existing code is pristine and it's written by experts, triple-checking every line. The reality is, much of the current software infrastructure people rely on every day was built by tired humans at 2 a.m., patching bugs on the fly. It's not like the status quo is impeccable.
Yeah, so vibe coding isn't necessarily worse than a lot of the code running systems you use every day. It may actually be more consistent once the AI improves. And with agentic systems, code could evolve organically. Imagine a system that observes its own usage in real time, identifies where users struggle, and autonomously makes improvements. Imagine systems that self-improve, where the loop of design, build, test, repeat becomes partially automatic.
We should clarify what we mean. These systems would automatically prototype and protocycle. Traditionally, prototyping is just building an early version of your software. Protocycling takes this further. You build a prototype, test it in real-world conditions, gather feedback, and cycle back immediately, possibly within hours, using AI to refine the code. It's an ongoing partnership between man and machine. In time, this could become almost automatic, perhaps only requiring human approval.
Right. Vibe coding could be just the beginning of a more organic type of development where systems continuously get better on their own. And if you're a startup trying to do the old multi-month prototyping approach, you might be outrun by AI-driven teams that iterate 100 times faster.
That's the real existential threat to the traditional software model. It's not just code generation, it's the entire feedback cycle that AI can accelerate. And once we factor in the possibility of AI building on its own improvements, the speed gap might become astronomical.
And this vibe trend in software coding isn't going to be limited to software.
That's right. I expect the prefix vibe will creep into a lot of fields of knowledge work. We could be looking at a movement where non-experts use AI to do work they once relied on experts to do. Vibe tax planning, vibe contract writing, vibe medicine, vibe architecture. A vibe revolution.
Let's talk about a current example. Chegg, the educational platform known for homework help and notorious for students who cheat on their assignments. Chegg's stock plummeted after ChatGPT came out because suddenly students could ask ChatGPT to solve problems or explain concepts, bypassing Chegg entirely.
And that's just one vertical. We could name many. Language learning apps overshadowed by AI tutors, code debugging tools replaced by advanced code generation AIs, entire support ticket systems replaced by GPT-based chat agents. It's reminiscent of how Google integrated travel info and squeezed sites like TripAdvisor.
Yes, but here's a deeper parallel. The newspaper industry. We've seen how the internet chipped away at it over time. Classified ads went to Craigslist, real estate ads went online, obituaries moved to digital, weather reports became the most Googled keyword, It wasn't one big event, it was the dance of the 7 veils, with each revenue stream removed one after the other.
And a lot of people in the newspaper business didn't see the end coming, or they saw it, but assumed it would be just another minor pivot. They survived radio, they survived TV, so they thought the internet was just another ripple in a pond. Unfortunately, it turned out to be the tsunami that decimated the industry.
We had a front row seat to this, and we have a story to share. We were doing a lot of business trips to find new clients in the late 90s and in the early 2000s. We met with the editor of a major newspaper chain in London, England, and the Thomson Group in Toronto. These were smart, experienced people. They knew that something was up, but they had no idea about the magnitude. They thought it was a wave of change, like they had seen in the past. Instead, they got caught off guard by the slow-moving tsunami of the internet that completely swamped their industry.
Exactly. It was a little like watching bathers at the beach when the water recedes before the tsunami hits. Some people run, others stand and stare, not fully grasping the magnitude. The newspaper industry mostly stood and watched. And while it took years, it completely transformed their industry.
The lesson? Industries don't die all at once, but eventually large sections can get wiped out. Software isn't a monolith, it's incredibly distributed. AI can pick off portions of it, coding assistance here, data analytics there, until large swaths are gone or automated, and it won't necessarily care whether you're an A+ developer or a novice.
Yes, it's not about skill alone. The big wave can swallow up whole domains at a time. And if you think you're safe because you're a top-tier coder, well, remember, the best journalists at newspapers weren't spared when the ad revenue model collapsed.
Another angle is building your software on top of AI. Let's say you incorporate GPT's API into your product. Problem solved, right?
Maybe not. If the foundation of an application is an API from a major AI provider, that provider might just absorb your functionality into its own platform. We've seen that with Facebook, Twitter. Third-party innovations get copied by the platform, and the original developers fade out. They end up blazing the trail for the platform.
That's especially relevant when the AI is agentic. It might see your approach, adapt, and offer the same solution. And you could be overshadowed in a heartbeat. This wave doesn't discriminate. It just rolls over whatever's in its path.
We have to remember that the internet decimated the newspaper industry, but it did it slowly. AI will probably move much faster, precisely because it can replicate entire functionalities without waiting for humans to code them. Like an elephant accidentally rolling over a mouse, it's not personal. It's just how big and powerful these AI ecosystems can be. Let's not get too pessimistic. We also need to consider new opportunities. Historically, every major technological leap has created openings for those who adapt. The question is, how?
We might see entrepreneurs pivot to ultra-specialized solutions that big AI platforms won't bother to replicate, or at least not immediately. Niche markets where trust, personalization, or local expertise make a difference might survive longer.
Or businesses could focus on proprietary data. If you own a unique data set or a strong brand, that might be your moat. AI can replicate code, but it can't replicate exclusive data, at least not overnight.
Another approach is to become an integrator. Instead of building a product from scratch, you stitch together multiple AI tools, add specialized hardware or domain-specific modules, and deliver a packaged solution. The real value might be in surfing the tsunami rather than trying to outswim it.
We've also mentioned vibe coding as part of this shift. The synergy between humans and AI can be leveraged for massive innovation. If you ride this wave, you could build sophisticated products at unprecedented speed. That's a potential renaissance.
Yet we have to be real. No one is immune. Even top software developers could be replaced or overshadowed if they ignore AI. Industries tend to crumble at the margins first. Then as the wave gains momentum, more core functionalities get swept away.
It's a balancing act. The best advice is to remain flexible and exploit AI where it helps you. Resist the urge to cling to a traditional model that might become obsolete. We can't just stand on the beach thinking this is another small wave. So we've talked about how AI could threaten software startups across the board. But there's another side to that coin. The possibility of entirely new startup models rising to the top. Let's dig into some scenarios where entrepreneurs might still carve out a winning position.
Exactly. One approach we're seeing is the hyper-specialized startup, teams that tackle a very narrow, often obscure problem that big AI providers aren't incentivized to solve. Think customized compliance tools for a niche industry or AI-accelerated solutions for a very specific medical procedure. Those might stay under the radar of the big platforms, at least initially.
Right? Because a massive AI company might focus on broad verticals with the largest user bases. If your startup addresses something too small for them to bother with, yet big enough for you to sustain a business, you could have some breathing room.
Then there's the proprietary data angle. If you're the only one with the data, maybe it's from a tight-knit network, long-term partnerships, or specialized IoT devices, AI can't just replicate that out of thin air. The code might be easy to replicate, but your data could be a moat.
That strategy works best when your data is unique or locked behind contracts or relationships that an open AI model can't easily scrape. If you can securely own or control a data pipeline, you have leverage.
Another model I see emerging is the AI integrator. Instead of building a single product from scratch, you become the orchestrator of multiple AI systems. You piece them together, add domain-specific logic, maybe layer on hardware or specialized user experiences. The real value is your ability to unify these separate tools so that they solve a complex real-world problem in a seamless way.
And let's not forget the human plus AI approach, where your startup's main selling point is the synergy between a small team of experts and a suite of AI tools. Maybe you offer consulting, creative direction, or high-level decision-making that AI can't fully replicate. Clients buy into your human expertise, while you use AI behind the scenes to speed up delivery.
Exactly. Whether it's brand building, trust, or hands-on customization, you can still add something the AI alone can't provide. This is especially relevant in industries where compliance, liability, or customer relationships matter. People still like to know there's a responsible human in the loop.
And we'd be remiss not to mention brand differentiation. We've seen how some software players survived market disruptions by building passionate communities around their products. Even if AI can replicate your features, it might not replicate the emotional bond you have with your users or customers.
So, in a nutshell, it's not a single path. It's about finding a niche, a data moat, an integration angle, or a human-led advantage that the giant AI wave either can't or won't immediately wash away. These models don't guarantee success, but they offer more resilience in a world where AI can replicate code on demand.
Precisely. We can't promise a magic bullet, but if you're serious about launching something new in software, these strategic angles might keep you above water long enough to gain real traction. So we've talked about new startup models that might survive or even thrive in an AI-driven landscape. But let's shift gears and face a big reality check. Developers are being asked to create solutions for a future that may look nothing like today.
Right, because normally you see a problem in the here and now, you solve it, and that's the core of your new venture. But if we fast forward 3 to 5 years, AI might be so capable that today's pain points either disappear or are automatically solved by AI. As a developer, you could be building something that either isn't needed or that AI can handle by then.
And that's on top of the usual startup risks, like will this tech work, or will anyone buy it? Now, there's an extra layer of uncertainty. Will an AI just do this on its own? That's a tough place to be in if you're trying to plan a multi-year roadmap.
Exactly. It's like aiming at a moving target while you're also on a moving platform. Even if you're in the right place today, you have no guarantee it will be relevant when AI evolves in the next few years.
Some developers decide to retreat up market. They focus on an obscure or highly specialized niche where they assume AI won't go. But that strategy is risky for two reasons. First, AI might be way more capable than you anticipate, and it's increasingly good at pivoting into those specialized tasks. If big AI providers see a profitable niche, they may adapt quickly.
Right, you're hoping to dodge the wave, but the wave can change direction. Or a smaller AI startup with more resources might come along and tackle that niche, putting you in direct competition, even though you thought you were safe.
Second, there's a marketing risk. Marketing to a peculiar niche can be very expensive. You might need specialized sales teams, conferences, or targeted ads. Costs can skyrocket, so you end up burning through capital, all while hoping that AI doesn't swoop in and do it better.
Combine those two factors, the unknown trajectory of AI's capabilities and the potential marketing overhead, and you're looking at a massively higher risk profile for developers than what was typical a decade ago.
Exactly. We don't want to discourage innovation, but we do need to acknowledge that in this AI era, the stakes are higher. The future you're building for might shift under your feet before your solution is even ready.
That's why we keep coming back to adaptability. Even if you think you have the perfect idea, you need to stay nimble enough to pivot if AI suddenly changes the problem landscape or jumps into your specialized market. And with that, let's move on to some concrete tactics.
So, if you're a founder or an aspiring one, here's what you can do right now. Shorten your timelines. Assume you have less time to achieve product viability. AI can help you build in weeks what used to take months. Use it offensively, not defensively. Focus on proprietary data. Unique data or relationships in an industry can be a moat. AI can replicate code, but not necessarily your specialized data set or close client connections. Explore B2B partnerships. Embed your tech into a larger ecosystem before the wave washes over you. Partnering might keep you safe, or at least afloat, a bit longer. Embrace the human-AI synergy. Lean into vibe coding, or equivalent methods where creativity and empathy from humans combine with AI's speed. These might yield unique, defensible offerings. Scan for opportunities that Tsunami creates. Like real estate after a natural disaster, new prime land may open up for those who move quickly. Keep an eye out for niches that AI inadvertently carves out.
Remember, ignoring AI is the worst strategy. Use agentic tools, experiment with them, and integrate them into your startup process. Don't be the person staring at the receding tide, oblivious to what's coming.
We've thrown around the word tsunami a lot. Let's talk about magnitude. Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic, has made quite optimistic, or depending on your perspective, dramatic, predictions that AI will replace software programmers entirely. Meanwhile, others like IBM's CEO say that's unlikely, or at least not so soon.
So, who do you believe? Honestly, it may not matter. If there's even a chance this is a tsunami, you have to treat it like one. If you're standing where the wave will hit, you lose everything, whether it's now or in a few years.
Some people adopt pessimistic projections because they have skin in the game. They are the ones who stand to be replaced. Think of journalists in the newspaper industry. They believed they'd adapt just fine because they always had before. We now know how badly that worked out for them.
And let's remember that industries don't die overnight. It happens in stages. the revenue model for newspapers was stripped away piece by piece, like the dance of the seven veils. Similarly, coding or software development roles might be eroded from the edges inward. Maybe QA goes first, then front end, then parts of back end, until eventually there's not much left.
The practical upshot is that whether you're a major enterprise or a small startup, you can't hide. If you're in a tall enough concrete building, maybe you survive the tsunami for a while. But if your core offering is software that AI can replicate, you're definitely in the flood zone. We've been talking about how quickly AI might transform the software landscape, and whether that's a tsunami or just a big wave. But let's get a bit more specific about timelines and what founders should do in each scenario.
Great idea. Let's break it down into 3 rough time frames: the next 6 months, the next 2 years, and beyond 5 years. Obviously, these are guesses, but they can help you plan and pivot before it's too late.
In the short term, the biggest changes might be tools and workflows. AI-powered coding assistants, chat-based design tools, or agentic AIs for marketing copy will become ubiquitous. If you're launching a startup now, adopt AI tools immediately. Don't wait. Use them to speed up prototyping, reduce development costs, and refine your MVP. Shorten feedback loops. Run A/B tests more frequently, and iterate based on real user data. AI can help you analyze metrics much faster. Build AI familiarity into your culture. Even if you're not an AI-first company, your team needs to be comfortable experimenting with these tools.
In the medium term, some startups will have crashed and burned because they ignored AI, or they tried to compete head-to-head with a generative model. Meanwhile, successful ones will have secured proprietary data or niche positioning. If you're not building a brand or a data moat, you might be out of luck. Adopted hyper-lean operations. With AI doing much of the coding and repetitive tasks, you don't need a large, expensive team. Investors will also expect to see meaningful progress in half the time compared to older models. Demonstrated defensible AI integration. Whether it's a unique algorithm, domain expertise, or a specialized user experience, something that can't be replaced overnight by a bigger AI platform.
Looking even further out, we could be dealing with ASI-level capabilities, or at least extremely advanced AIs that automate entire business processes end-to-end. In that world, human-centric roles shift. Much of the coding, or even product management, might be done by AI. You'll focus on strategy, creative direction, user empathy, and compliance. Survival depends on adaptability. Startups that last will constantly pivot. Even niche markets might be targeted by AI if they prove lucrative enough. You'll need a mindset of continuous reinvention. Collaboration with AI giants, partnerships, or integrations with large AI platforms might be unavoidable. Position yourself to be an indispensable layer, rather than easy-to-replace code.
So, no matter which time frame you're most worried about, the common thread is adaptation. You can't afford to ignore AI, and you can't pretend it'll be business as usual. Think of this as your strategic blueprint, short, medium, and long term.
Exactly. Each time frame brings different risks and opportunities, but if you plan for these waves, you'll be better positioned to pivot, or even ride them to success. And with that, let's move to our conclusion and how you can take immediate action. That brings us to the end of our conversation. We've outlined how software startups have traditionally grown, why that timeline is at risk, how AI in its agentic or vibe coding forms might absorb entire industries, and how these transformations resemble a slow but relentless tsunami.
Ultimately, the biggest takeaway for me is adapt fast or risk being overshadowed. The software industry has never stood still, but AI is accelerating the pace of change like nothing before. If you try to build a traditional software startup, you may find the wave is already at your ankles.
We'd love to hear your thoughts, experiences, or fears about AI's role in software development. Are you building something new? Are you pivoting to AI-driven solutions? Head over to Verlicity.ai or send us a message on social media. Let's keep this conversation alive because it's going to shape the next decade of innovation.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with anyone who needs a wake-up call about the new realities of software entrepreneurship. We're all in uncharted waters here, so let's navigate them together. That's it for us today. I'm Cristian Worthington.
And I'm Sandra Giffin, signing off from the Verlicity AI Podcast. Stay curious, stay informed, and most of all, stay agile.